Hi guys, welcome to our first episode of a little show we like to call Table Talk with TEDx, an opportunity for you guys to get to know our speakers a little more and what they're all about before hitting the stage on Saturday, February 29th at our upcoming TEDxCSULB conference. My name is Raymond Luke, the Director of Marketing Communications, and I am here with, please feel free to introduce yourself.
Yes, so thank you for having me, and my name is George Elerick. I am basically a behavioral experimentalist, so I get to create and alchemize kind of scenarios and social situations just to kind of investigate and research human behavior and find out why we do what we do.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us today. We're excited to have you. So the name of the game is I would just be asking you a couple questions just to get to know you a little bit more, and we'll just have a loose conversation. We'll go from there. Does that sound good?
Sounds awesome. Let's do this.
Awesome. All right, so first question we're going to start off is, what motivated you to sign up for TEDxCSULB?
Oh, I love that question. So a little bit of my history is that a large portion of my childhood, I actually grew up in Long Beach.
Right.
So for me, there is some sort of kind of romanticized nostalgia of coming back, but also giving back,
right,
to the community that actually gave to me, and has actually invested itself in me at such a young age. So for me, it was just following the inspiration and following the ability to actually just give back to something. And for me, why not give back to the very place that actually helped mold and shape me who I am?
Going off of that, do you mind sharing a little bit more about what example of that experience that helped you shape that motivation to give back to our community?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, well, like I said, I grew up here as a child. Very, a lot of my memories are bound up in living in Long Beach, and a lot of it is actually, I mean, I say romanticized nostalgia. It wasn't an easy childhood actually living here, but I feel like why not give back? Even though my childhood may not be perfect and it was not a perfect scenario living here in Long Beach, I do believe that any city almost has a life of its own, and to be able to invest back into what a city could be, and to the potential of a city, and to use my voice as a way to kind of spotlight Long Beach and CSU Long Beach, is something that is both reflexively empowering for me, right? But also I hopefully, empowering for CSULB TEDx.
Yeah, awesome. I'm great to hear about all your story and like a little more personable experience as well. Like, glad to hear it.
Yes, yeah, I'll be sharing more of that in more detail during my speech.
Awesome. Look forward to it. All right, so the next one is, what inspired you to do the work that you do?
Oh, that's such a great question. Do we have 2 hours? No, it's so I am intrigued by human behavior.
Right.
And one of the elements, and again, I'm going to go into this in more detail during the talk, is what had initially inspired me to even get into the field of behavioral economics and essentially kind of branch out on my own and focus on behavioral experiments and creating behavioral experiments is my own trauma. And so I'm so intrigued by the fact that we as a species, not just as Americans, but literally as a species across the globe, and I've spent time in other countries, living in other countries, and we all want to be free. We all define it differently, and it materializes extremely differently, depending on the context and the culture and the beliefs and whatever it is that's guiding that particular country's culture and identity. However, for me, what's very interesting is that we are driven and we're obsessed by this idea. However, most of the tools that we use are doing the exact opposite. So, one of the terms that I'll be exploring is called effective forecasting, and it's the way in which we overestimate our emotional experience in an event or a moment. And so, to give you a quick example, like a job promotion, we might think, I deserve a job promotion. I'm going to ask for the job promotion, and that job promotion is going to change my life for the better. Well, 2 months, 3 months down the line, you have less time with your kids. You might be able to buy more things, but you're less happy, And so what's kind of psychology and neuroscience have discovered is that we're not really good at actually interpreting our own emotional states.
That is interesting. Like, you understand, like, with time and like, a lot of people get to know themselves better, but then like you were saying, proposing a lot of different concepts, it's like there's more to consider than just your initial thoughts and emotions. Correct?
Yes. And usually, by the way, this tool, affective forecasting, is guided by what you and I have just talked about earlier, was our trauma. It's always guided. So we're using this tool to say, I want to be prepared for this event up there. Right. And so I'm going to think, when I get this object, when I get this new car, it's going to change my life. Right. But in reality, 2 months down the line, you might be on the side of the road with a lemon. The car might be completely opposite, and it might actually give you more headaches and less peace.
So in that sense, like, do you think effective forecasting is used to better enhance one's life to predict, or is there a little more so drawbacks to that?
Well, and this is my main argument in my talk, is that in the name of preparation, we also experience avoidance. And so what most referred to as preparation tends to be avoidance.
Right.
And what I mean to say is that we're avoiding two things. One, we are avoiding the present, because if you're constantly guided by a what if scenario, right, and your emotional state is constantly there, then your emotional state is never here. So there is no present moment. There's no need for the present moment. And so you're never in this moment now with whoever it is that you want to be. Let's say you were like, hey, I met this girl and this first date is going to be great. And you're right. And it's that cool scenario. You're going to be there. But really what you've done is you've essentially created a scenario that may or may not happen. And you've created the physiology that thinks it's going to happen that way.
Right.
But you've also not given yourself the skills to react to the scenario if it doesn't happen that way. Right.
So it's like, for example, like you expect a lot of things to happen when it doesn't, you don't know how to bounce back or cope with it.
Exactly.
Me. Me on a daily basis. But we're working on it.
Yeah.
Character development, all about that. Awesome. All right. So another third question is, what is one key takeaway that you would like our audience or attendees to obtain from your TEDx presentation?
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
I think the crux of the message is that freedom is real. Freedom can be experienced, and we can have a hand in our own liberation. However, sometimes hiding under the cloak of freedom is this overdependence on our emotions to get us ready for events that may or may never happen. And so the tools and strategies that we think are helping us are actually the tools and strategies that are actually keeping us in prison and never experiencing the freedom that we deserve.
Right. Because, for example, like if you, going back to that scenario of like expecting too much and not being disappointed about it, like, wouldn't you say that, let's see, more so, I'm thinking about like the first date scenario. Like,
Yes.
You think it works out, but you think it doesn't. And it's just like, because you have so many options and availability of thoughts, like for two that cater to one's definition of freedom.
Yeah.
Like how do you think it works out in the end?
So you mean like how would it work out for them if they were to remove effective forecasting?
Or in the sense, like, how would they be able to effectively apply effective forecasting in the sense that, like, one's concept of their personal freedom and what they desire most.
So looking at effective forecasting as a positive rather than a negative.
Right.
Right. So one way in which you can use effective forecasting is more in the personal development. You were joking about personal development earlier, is confidence. So you can create, and they've actually have shown proof, which is amazing within the field of neuroscience and brain science, is that your brain, your subconscious cannot tell the difference between what's happening now and what you are daydreaming about. And if you daydream about it enough to the point to where what you're daydreaming about feels real, and you begin taking on the tones of that reality over time, and if you continuously do this as a pattern, and like let's say as a 2, 3, 4, 5 week habit where you get up every day and you play this role or this scene where you're like, I'm more confident, I am confident, and mantras and all of this kind of stuff. And this is beyond a lot of that kind of pseudo spirituality that's really popular. This is literally just neuroscience at the base root, saying we can literally use a tool like effective forecasting so that we can develop confidence more.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so it does tend to be more about our own personal development rather than outside scenarios that we're not in control of, that we can't really ever have control of. Because as you know, if you go on that first date, there's a whole other person that has choice, that has agency.
The freedom. Right,
exactly. And they can do what they want. However, with your own confidence, whether it be overcoming fears, whether it becoming like a better person at memorizing things or whatever it is, or, installing new habits that make you a better version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's where effective forecasting can be used positively.
Awesome. And more information on that in his TED Talk.
Yes, be there.
Of course. All right, so the last one is for now. How would you describe your TEDx presentation?
Ooh, great question.
If you had to give a brief synopsis to someone that didn't know you and what you're about to do and your background, how would you pitch it to them?
Okay, so my talk is going to explore the nature of effective forecasting, all the while using pop culture references like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Also inviting the audience to participate in a human experiment. And so it's going to be quite interactive. At least that's my hope. It's going to be interactive, right? Because again, agency, you can't control what they're going to do. But it's going to explore probably at the beginning what it is that drives our desire to be free, but at the same time, why do we use tools that keep us from ever being free, like effective forecasting? And then it will go into my own personal story of trauma and my childhood, and how trauma basically informs why we justify the use of effective forecasting. So at the heartbeat of that. And then I want to explore a little bit of my experiments work, where I'm going to divulge a little bit more information in the talk about one experiment I did in downtown Vancouver that ended up helping an older gentleman walk away from all the trauma that he himself had experienced. And then hopefully end with some practical tips of how people themselves in the audience and whoever's listening can actually find liberation, and they can actually be the writer of their own story and potential.
Nice. So going off of that, if you had 3 adjectives, how would you do it? How would you describe it?
Okay. Wait a minute. Okay. Adverb, adjective. I'm just kidding. Okay.
3 words.
So, freedom.
Cool.
Trauma.
Nice.
Liberation.
Nice. Sounds like it gets a lot of people thinking about how all those 3 culminate.
Yeah.
Very, very thought-provoking, of course. All right, so bonus question.
Yes.
It's not on the script or anything like that.
Ooh.
What do you like to do for a living?
Okay, so outside of behavioral economics and all of this kind of stuff, I dabble in several different things. So one, I'm an adrenaline junkie. So I love the outdoors. I do rock climbing. I'm about to jump out of a plane in a couple of months.
Whoa!
But that, by the way, which is really cool, is I'm actually planning to move up and eventually get to a wingsuit. But you have to jump out of a plane 200 times to be able to actually. It's pretty insane. So we'll see how that goes.
Like almost once every other day.
If you did it consecutively.
Right.
It's pretty insane.
That's a ton of adrenaline.
Oh, dude, it's totally and I love adrenaline stuff that pushes me to my limits.
Right.
So that kind of stuff, and then just for my creative side, I'd like to do stand up when So those are a couple of areas that I really like to just dip my toes into, and just because it gets me outside of myself, it gets me outside of my comfort zone, pushes me,
Nice. I was like, can I see you on the next Comedy Central special?
I'm working towards that actually.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Ooh,
So we'll see.
Sneak peek. I like that. All right. So that's it for the interview. Do you have any last comments, plugs? Where can people find you?
So if you guys want to find me anywhere, it's A Traveler's Note on Instagram, A Traveler's Note on Twitter, and pretty much across all of the platforms. And and that's pretty much it. I write for psychcentral.com, and you can find out my thoughts on human behavior there. Nice.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, George, for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, make sure to check out George on his platforms and TEDxCSULB on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, website, everything, YouTube coming up, we'll be We'll be sure to include everything in the description below, so make sure to check that out. If you guys like more of these videos, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with all your friends. We'll be producing more, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.
See ya.